Hello there.
So, good morning, Jackie. Uh, Today we are going to have a conversation regarding the situated expectancy-value theory. We talk about your book. My name is Mabre Mugabo. I'm a PhD candidate from Purdue University. I'm studying sustainable. My research is about the use of motivation, the use of situated expectancy-value theory to understand what motivates smallholder farmers in Rwanda. So we are going to have a conversation, but as we start, can you introduce yourself?
Okay. I'm Jacquelynne Eccles, and I got my PhD in developmental psychology from UCLA in 1973, so a long time ago. I'm older than many of you, even from when you were born. So I got my degree. Before I got my degree, I got my bachelor's degree in 1966 from Berkeley, from the University of California, Berkeley. Then went into the Peace Corps for 2 years and taught secondary school in Ghana, in Kanango Odumasi, a little village that was halfway between Accra and Kumasi on the main road in the country. Lived for 2 years there. I had a wonderful time. The students, the Ghanaian students, were amazing. They were so much more motivated than American students, and they were just so much more fun to teach. And we had a really, really good time, and a lot of time learning new things that even I didn't know before I started teaching the courses there. Then I came back and I had my son, and applied to get into UCLA, and got into UCLA to get my PhD. I got my PhD 5 years later, and my first job was at Smith College, which is a women's college in Massachusetts. Beautiful place. First time I had lived on the East Coast of the United States. So I just want to that's true despite the fact that I lived all over the world. My father was in the military, so we spent part of my childhood in Germany, part of my childhood in California, and part of my childhood in Japan and Okinawa. So I experienced many different cultures before I started college, and then again, as I said already, we went to Ghana in the Peace Corps, and then I settled down in Massachusetts for 3.5 years. While there, I decided I really wanted to work at a major research university because I was really interested in research, much more so than other aspects of being a professor. So I moved to the University of Michigan, and was at Michigan, and then along the way, I taught for a while at the University of Colorado in Boulder. I taught back at Michigan, and then I came out here to California, the University of California, Irvine.
Wow.
So I moved from several universities, so 3 different universities I taught in.
Wow. I remember, Jackie, you know, I'm from Rwanda. I was born in Africa. I came here in US 2021 where I did my master's. Then when I moved to Purdue for agricultural sciences, education and communication, that's where I started to use motivation theory. So even the way I connected with you, it was when I went on Google Scholar. I got your email. I sent email because I was interested for your theory. So sometimes people, they don't know who you are, but your theory, situated expectancy value theory, is very known. So can you give us the background of this theory, even the evolution of situated expectancy value theory?
Sure. So expectancy value theory at the most general level has been around for a very long time. It's a classic cognitive rational theory of behavior. So one of the first major people to try to begin research, systematic research on expectancy value with Jack Atkinson, and he developed a theory about basically needs. So he talked a lot about need achievement, need power, need affiliation, as human beings having these fundamental needs that were almost like personality characteristics, and they would be activated in particular situations. So if you were the kind of person who had high need achievement, meaning achievement was very important to you, you would see situations and define them in terms of the opportunities for achievement. So if you're given an assignment in school, you will quickly try to see how fast you can finish it compared to somebody else.
Yes.
So people who have high need achievement, if you put them in a situation where you can compete or where you can try to excel and do better than somebody else or better than you did in the past, that will be highly motivating because it draws on this need that you have. Now, what Atkinson didn't talk very much about was the value side of expectancy values. He thought that value was basically linked to the difficulty of the task. So if you have expectancies, they're related to the difficulty of the task. So he said, look, the value of the task would be 1 minus the difficulty. So if you're absolutely sure you would succeed, it wouldn't be particularly useful for you. If you thought it was going to be quite difficult, but you could succeed, then it would be very valuable. And given that that was his stance, he essentially algebraically eliminated value from the equation. He was a mathematical psychologist. And when he said that value was 1 minus the probability of success, if you solve that equation, value disappears. It essentially becomes expectancies times 1 minus expectancies, as would be the basic formula of how you would get the extent of motivation for a given individual. While I was at Smith College, I started working with a young woman, Susan Goff, and she and I really began thinking about value. And we knew, or we felt, that Atkinson was incorrect, that many things would give a task value. So saying it was 1 minus the probability of success, maybe for some people that would be what would give it value. But for others, helping others might give it value. Or making something beautiful would give it value. Getting paid for it would give it value. Making your family proud of you would give it value. So that there were many kinds of outcomes of activities that could give the activity value to any given person. So we started theorizing about that. We said, all right, there are many things. Can we reduce them to a reasonable number that one could actually begin doing some research on it? So we said, we're expectancy value theorists. Let's fill out what values are and develop measures for values. And that would be a good way to think about motivation. So that was where I got very interested in what values were. And that's where we came up with what we talk about in the book as values are determined by intrinsic value, which is how much you enjoy. You think you will enjoy the task. Utility value, which is how useful the task will be for your immediate and long-range goals. Attainment value, which people often say, isn't that just the same as utility value? So attainment value was the extent to which the task helped you enact core characteristics about yourself.
Is it connected to your identity?
Yes. And so identity is a word that people started using later for what this thing is. So that we can have goals. Some of those goals are more central to us than others. Some of them are part of who we think we are, our core selves, and those we call identities. So the difference between a utility value and an attainment value is simply how central the goal is that you're talking about, how close it is to your idea. So when I say central, I mean identity are those things that are so central to who we are that we are going to do everything we can to make them true of us. So someone could have an identity as being a mathematician, and then to them being a mathematician would be so important. It would take it would beat anything else one could do. So given the opportunity, one would spend one's time studying mathematics because that's so close to their identity. That's an academic area. You could also identify as being a football player, in which case you would do anything that would let you play and practice football would have high attainment value to you, because becoming a great football player is such a core part of who you think you are. You could think about the same thing with religion. Religions often become part of one's identity because their families and their community says this is such an important part that you want to be a Christian, a Muslim, a Buddhist. What that means is you learn what is valued by that religious set of beliefs, and they're so important to you that anything that lets you engage in those activities will have high attainment value because it's core to your identity. Other people, religion won't be core to their identity, but for many people in the world, religion is very core to their identity. So they would do things related to those beliefs. So they might become a pastor, or they might become a rabbi, or they might go out and do missionary service, or they might see as part of their religious core helping others, so they would go into medicine so they could go and help people all over the world that were needing medical care. So that's when we think about the continuum from utility value to attainment value, and I use the word continuum very explicitly, we're talking about how central the task is to the person. And the more central, the more likely it's going to be acting like attainment value.
So do you connect with achievement?
That would be a first one. So that would be going back to Atkinson. So when he talks about need achievement being a continuum from you don't have it at all to you have lots of it, that's another language, another way to talk about how central and core this particular way of being in the world is to you. So if being very successful and being a very high achiever, you will be attracted to things that help you do that. So that identity will lead to specific goals, and those goals will have a great deal of attainment value. And that's just more extreme utility value. So you could say it's just a utility value at the extreme, or you could say it's more autonomous because it's more related to who you think you are as opposed to who your mom thinks you should be or who your teacher thinks you should be. This is who you think you should be, and therefore you will do the things that will let you be that person. And you will avoid the things that counter that view. So if being a female is an extremely central part of who you are, then you will dress like the stereotype of females in your culture. You will do the activities that females are supposed to do, and they will have preference over other activities that you will engage in. The same way with being a man. So if we think about what are some of the core identities, I think gender is a core identity for most people. Faith, religious faith is a core identity. Achievement or not. So am I the kind of person that's going to really work hard and be very successful versus, no, I just want to hang out. I want to just live life calmly. So those are domains on which we think people are likely to have, most people will have core identities related to those kinds of activities.
I remember when, thank you, Jack. I remember when I consulted you about my instrument when I was doing my research. What motivates smallholder farmers, specifically in Rwanda, to use mobile phone for agriculture information. So you have been giving me the language. So you have been just saying, okay, when you are talking about these values, attainment value, intrinsic value, utility value, you need to have a language.
Yes.
Why?
Well, because you want to measure it. And you want to talk with other people about it. So you have to have agreement on what these terms mean. Otherwise, when I say utility value is important, you may think of something very different than what I'm thinking of. So I think it's, from a scientific perspective, it's absolutely critical that we define things in a very simple and easy to understand manner.
Let me take you back, even what you told me, even which was very helpful to me, when you said, okay, regarding your study, use of mobile phone for agriculture information, this is how you are going to address, to measure intrinsic value. You have been just saying enjoyment. Then utility value have been using usefulness. Regarding the attainment, you have been just saying how important.
Yeah.
So can you explain a little bit about, even, I think now you have understanding of the agriculture information a little bit in Rwanda. So can you explain someone who is even from Rwanda, like, to understand how utility of mobile phone is different to attainment value regarding mobile phone?
Yes. I mean, if I were trying to develop measures, I would think hard about what I've been talking to you about. So I would think, for example, if you want to know the utility of using mobile phones for agricultural purposes, you need to ask that very specifically. Because if you say, how useful is a mobile phone? And they say, oh, very useful. You don't know useful for what. That's why you need to be specific. So you could say, well, how useful, first of all, do you use the phone to get information that you can use in your farming? And if they say yes, then the next question is why. And if it's just for usefulness, you will get an answer like, well, I know I can get good information, and I know that if I apply that information, it will increase my agricultural production. I can then use that production to sell my products and earn more money. So that would be an example of a theme that I would say that's talking about utility value. Because the person is saying, I'm going to use the phone. It's very useful for me to get this information. Why? Because the information will let me improve my farm output, which will get me money, or whatever is the coinage of the realm. So whatever they need to buy other things. So it's a way of exchanging what you have for other things. Now, you could have a chief, or you could have someone who wants to be seen as the most knowledgeable person, and that's very important to them, and they will say, well, yes, I use it. Why do you use it for? Well, because it makes people respect me. It makes me I own the information, and it is important to me that people come to me and ask me for advice, and I want to be a teacher, so I want to teach other people. And you say, well, how important is that to you? And they say, oh, very important. Then we're talking about attainment value. So it's really the way the person thinks about it, and how do we measure that? It's hard to measure.
At that point, it's connected to your future goals.
Well, utility can be connected to your future goals. I want to have better products. It really is. You would need, if you were doing qualitative work, you would need to probe it and say why. Why do you want to have that information? And then you would hear them talk, and they would say different things. So one person would say, well, it works. It will help me make more money. It will make me a better father, because I will have money that I can spend on my family. then you say, well, how important is that to you? And they would say, oh, that's central to who I am. Then to them, using it for that purpose has become what we would call attainment value. And it's become part of their identity, so it gets extra value. It's more than utility, so it gets extra points for being also very central.
Wow.
So they're very close. It's a continuum. People start, and DC and Ryan talk about this in self-determination theory. They talk about people do things to make other people happy or to get rewards, and they call that extrinsic motivation. You're doing it for some reason outside of yourself, but gradually over time, that activity can become central to who you think you are. So you can imagine a child gets rewarded for helping their brother or their sister, and gradually being a helper, being seen as a helper, becomes, they go, oh, that's what I want to be. I want to be a helper. So then things that let me help others are not only useful, they help me to meet my identity goals.
Wow. So you talk about expectancy, ability to perform a specific task. You talk about the different values, intrinsic, utility value, and attainment value. So there is another one.
Cost.
The cost. What is that?
Well, everything. We have minimal time and energy, so everything we do means we aren't doing something else. So that's the simplest way to think about cost. I'm going to do this. That means I can't do that. So I'm going to go and practice football all afternoon. That means I can't study for my algebra test. And so it has cost. So if I do it and spend a lot of time on one thing, other things suffer as a consequence. Now, if those other things are very important to me, then that's going to make the value of playing soccer, for example, go down because there's a cost in playing soccer. It prevents me from doing homework. So, but there are other costs. So we wanted to think like an economist. An economist would say, well, there are benefits and costs for everything. And if you want to know the value of the activity of the person, you want to know both the things that make it positive and the things that detract from it, that make it negative. So we talk about lost time for other things. How much lost time, how bad lost time is depends on how important the activity that you can't do is to you. So it's not going to be the same for everybody. So if you want to be a great soccer player, then not doing well on your algebra test is not a cost. You don't care about algebra, so you're going to do the fact that it's going to be costly in terms of time you might spend with your friends, or time you might spend studying, or time you might spend doing chores at home, or time you might spend making money for your family. This person who's identified as being a soccer player, they will have those costs, but they won't care about them. So the actual costs will be very low because those things aren't important to them. But if they are, then that's a cost. So if your mother's going to yell at you because you didn't do the work in the garden that she needed you to do while you were playing soccer, then that can be a cost, and you made your mom unhappy, and you don't want to do that. She punishes you in some way, so that is a cost. Your dad then gets angry at you because you made your mom upset. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that can be a cost of engaging in an activity. It also can be that you have anxiety, so so for example, the only C grade I got in college was in an art class. I never took another art class because I was so anxious about getting another C. So the possibility of not getting an A was a great cost to me. It's linked to expectancy. So if I expect to fail, then expectancy value goes down, cost value goes up. So
cost is barrier, is constraint.
yes, it's constraints. You can expect, for some people it will be harder to do it than others because they don't have the help that they need. So that again feeds into expectancies. I mean, costs. We tried to come up with general categories, and so what we wanted to think about was what were the things that would draw you to a task, and what were the things that would make a task less valuable for you.
So is it reason why even the reason why is negative and barrier and constraint? I remember when we formulated the question, you have been just telling me nothing. Ask a question. Use of mobile phone, is it too expensive?
Yes.
Is it, use of mobile phone or navigating to different features of mobile phone. Oh, stress me out.
Right.
Things like that.
Yeah, that
then,
is exactly.
The time I was talking about you, the results, you said, did you do reverse coding? So why?
Well, you can code it as so. There is a controversy in the field about whether it should be expectancy, values, and cost, or whether costs can be part of values. And it turns out this is just mathematically the way the programs work. If you do a factor analysis to find out, well, is cost different than values? Is utility different than attainment value? Well, one thing that we do to find that out is we do a factor analysis. So we take a bunch of items, we have people fill them out, and then we factor it. And the factor is looking for communalities. So it's going to say these 4 items are more similar to each other than they are to any other items in the list. And that's by looking at the way people answer them. So they know that for this question, this set of questions, if you answered high on characteristic A, you also answered high on characteristic B. So it says, oh, well then maybe those are measuring the same, we call it latent characteristic. So this is, if we want to know what utility value is, we want to measure lots of different ways of thinking about utility value, and we think they all will hang together into a single scale. So when you do this, what you find is that expectancy, wait a minute, let me start again, that intrinsic value, utility value, and attainment value items will load together. You can get them to separate, so they will be you can separate them, but they will be highly correlated. So do you want to put them into a regression equation as 3 separate variables, or do you want to put them together as one scale? So if they're highly correlated, you want to put them together as a single scale, because if you put them in as 3 separate scales, it will look like none of them are significant, because they will be splitting the explained variance will be across all 3. And that's not what you want to know. What you want to know is, do they as a set have a significant predictive value for an activity? When you put cost in, if you don't code it, if you don't recode it, it's negatively related to all these things, and the computer will make it look like it's a different variable because you coded it negatively. And the only real difference is you coded it negatively and these are coded positively. So the pattern of correlations will look very different, and so the factor analysis will tell you, well, cost is not part of subjective task value, it's separate. But if you change the coding so that a high score means low cost or high value, then that won't happen. Then they will load more together. So I would prefer people to think about it as a set of things, so not just the attractors, but again, like an economist or a financier, I would like to put it all into one value. So the costs, the assets, so the good things, and the costs, and then bring them together and say, well, on balance, this thing is more valuable to the person than that thing. And it's always a choice. So when we're talking about, well, why would you do this at all, we're trying to predict whether the person does A or B. And that's a very simple notion. of what choice is. So that's where value and expectancies become important, and why it becomes important that we get it down to as few predictors as we can, so that we aggregate up. So you can take all these measures of value, absolutely critical, but how do they integrate into one figure, which for an economist would be your wealth. For a financier, it would be how much you owe the government, so what you're going to be taxed on. So we want to get it down as close as we can to a single characteristic, to a single number, and then put it into a regression where we're going to be picking whether or not they pick A or B. So you would want the subjective task value for becoming a scientist, a mathematician, or becoming a writer. So usually we're interested in these big choices, but we also know it applies every day in everybody's life. So I'm talking to you today as opposed to going swimming, or as opposed to reading a book. So why am I doing that? Well, I can tell you the value of talking to you today is very high. I can read a book tomorrow. I can read a book on Saturday. So there's no emergency. But talking to you this is something we can do today, but on Saturday you're gone. So that makes it the importance of doing it now and the cost of not doing it now is very high. So that's how we think about this at the most abstract level. And then you say, well, why do you get specific? Because you have to get specific to measure. So when you go from the theory down to the data collection, you want to be as specific as you can, because otherwise you get lots of garbage.
So did you find some researchers didn't do well for measurement using your theory?
Yes, we have. So there are many problems with the measures that are out there today. I don't like measures, and we talked about this, that say, I'm very good at math. Do you agree or disagree with that? I don't like that, and that's a common scale.
I remember this is how I came when I was talking to you. I wanted to use disagree.
And I said, no. No, it's a terrible scale, because people don't agree on what agree and disagree means. So that means you get a lot of error that you don't have any control over. I mean, there's error in everything, but you want to make your measurement instrument so specific that you get less error. So a better way to ask the question is, how good are you at math? And the scale goes from really bad to really good. And you make a line that goes from very bad to very good, and you put marks on it, and they can vary, the numbers. It doesn't really matter which number system you use, so you could have 1 to 100, you could have 1 to 7. It doesn't. You want a line, and you want points on the line, and then people will pick, how good are you at math? Oh, I'm really good at math, so I check that in.
I think this is what they call anchored scale.
Yes.
Not like a scale.
Yeah. Well, it is an anchored scale, but most scales are anchored. I mean, inches is an anchored scale. In hard science, everything is an anchored scale. Because they're measuring things that you can measure. We're measuring thoughts. That's harder than measuring how long is the table. But it's the same idea. You want to know how long the table is? You would not ask somebody, is this table 4 feet long? Agree, disagree. I mean, that would be crazy.
Yes.
You would say, okay, look at this table. Is it 3 feet, 2 feet, or 8 feet? And they would have a scale, 0 feet to 20 feet. And they would estimate, well, I think it's about 4 feet, or I think it's about 3 feet.
I remember when I spoke to you, you told me, Margaret, yes, you may think about this, but also consider the culture, consider the way back home they measure things.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, you want to make sure that everyone is understanding the scale as best as possible in the same way. So if some people, well, you would want to think about the number systems that are most common in the country. So for example, when sometimes here we'll use a thermometer. So we'll anchor the scale at boiling, freezing, because that would be a continue. So if kids know about freezing and boiling, and that it's water, and that goes from, it's a continuum from one to the other, you can ask that kind of scale, particularly for things like, well, how do you feel about this? You feel very hot, you feel very cold. And that gets a continuous measure that people will understand. In another culture where first of all, the temperature doesn't vary much, and second, people aren't always looking at a thermometer, so that's not a salient part. I mean, they just say, well, it's hot today. They don't care whether it's how hot. Then using a thermometer as an anchored scale would be not particularly useful. You'd get a lot of error in it. So you always want to be thinking about how do you reduce the error in the measurement, which means you have to make it as culturally appropriate as you can so that everybody answers the scale in the same way. So you would have to think about in Brenda, what gets measured a lot? What would kids understand about getting measured? What would adults understand about getting measured? It might be lengths, kilometers, so they understand how far they've walked. So you want to get as familiar as you can about the language and about the scale, so that you can trust that when a person in the study gives a high score to this, they understand that's a lot. If they give a low score to it, they understand that's a little.
Wow. So about coming back to your theory, I saw the name has been sometimes changed different times. So expectancy-value theory, then 2020, you said situated expectancy-value theory. Why situated?
Well, we were getting a lot of criticism that our theory was not complex enough, which of course surprised us because it's very complex. I mean, you know what the figure looks like. To do it all, it's
I
hugely
see
complex.
expectance, I see task values.
You see teachers, you see, I mean, it's very complicated, but everyone said, no, it's very rigid. So we wanted to make it very clear that what we mean is expectancy values in the moment and in the situation. So we don't assume the value of math to a person would be the same any day you asked it. We assume that it's going to be affected by the particular time they're making that decision. So just like we talked when I gave the example of talking to you, well, next Wednesday it wouldn't have the same value to me because you would be gone.
Yes.
So the value is situated in the moment, and it's situated in the task. So we sometimes simplify it when we do measures because we can't ask everybody about everything every minute of their lives. They would only spend time filling out our questionnaires and not live their life. So you have to narrow it down, but you also have to imagine that the fact that my study doesn't replicate somebody else's study, if each of us have not given enough information about the situation, we don't know whether it doesn't replicate. All we know is that in your situation you got these results, and in this situation we got these results. Now it's a very important question, the extent to which they're the same. But if they're not the same, that doesn't mean one's right and one's wrong. That can mean they're both right for the situation in the moment when it was asked.
That's how you come up with developmental,
yes,
social
over time. That's right, exactly, and
psychology.
That's right, exactly. So the situation can vary within a person across time. It can vary across people in the same time. So you can have kids in one classroom who will give you very, very different answers about how much whether they're going to work hard in this class or not. And that's because each of them has their own situation. And that's what we were being criticized about. So we said, no, that's actually an inherent part of the theory. So we decided we would put the name in so that people would know we're not talking about things that are stable over time and don't, and therefore really can't explain anything. I mean, we're talking about things that vary regularly. So a good example of that, I do collaborative work with people in Tübingen, Germany, and the University of Tübingen in Germany is probably the foremost educational research center. I was there visiting, and they had someone who was studying off-task behavior, daydreaming. So they were using cameras in classrooms, and they were coding how much time a child wasn't paying attention to what they were doing. And instead they were looking out the window, or they were asleep, or they were diddling with their hands. So they essentially called that daydreaming. And I said, expectancy value should predict that behavior, because daydreaming is a choice between thinking about something else and doing the task the teacher has assigned you. So you could try to understand what leads some kids to daydream more than others. And you could analyze it using expectancy value theory. And they said, oh my God, you can do that? And I said, yeah, measure the questions and you'll understand why some kids, either doing the task that the teacher wants has become so negative that anything else is better than that, or they have to think. And then you need to understand something about a way a person thinks. So if you're talking about someone who has Asperger's, for example, they may need to look away in order to think about what they're doing. So the reason they're daydreaming, I put that in parentheses, is because they need the downtime to think and to understand. For another kid, they're certainly not using the time for that. They're using the time to think about playing football in the afternoon. But that's part of this. It's the choice, even the unconscious choice, to look out the window instead of doing this can be analyzed using an expectancy value framework.
So thank you so much. That's very interesting. Even people who will follow this conversation will have clear understanding of situated expectancy-value theory. So I have seen you have been collaborating with different researchers. So it was interesting. Even when I was reading your book, I saw you collaborated with more than 45 years.
Yes. So
how do you start collaboration? Because I know how I started with you, how I reach out to you. So how easily you collaborate with other people?
Well, I'm going to ask you that question too. I'll give you my answer, but you've now interacted with me, so you could tell me what I did that makes you want to continue interacting with me.
When I sent email, you replied quick. Then, when I had my first interview, it was Zoom meeting, I was a little bit anxious, fear, just saying, okay, how am I going to talk about the person who developed the theory? But the way you talked to me, you made me comfortable. I was feel comfortable. You didn't even judge me. Even when I was talking to you regarding the questionnaire, you didn't say, no. You have been using the language saying, oh no, you need to formulate the question differently. So I was feeling comfortable based on how you are talking to me.
Okay. Well, not everyone does. So it is. I don't collaborate with everybody, but I think I do have that style. I'm interested in learning, and I'm very, very curious.
Maybe before you continue, even I was saying, okay, how is she going to feel comfortable to talk to me, international students, my accent? Then I said, okay, the way you give me value, I said, wow, that's amazing. So,
well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so
much. I very much want to build relationships in my research. I don't want to do research all on my own. I think it's I love to think about research as a collaborative activity all throughout my career. So I could give you an example of something that surprised me. So I went to graduate school. It was like 3 weeks into the first semester there. I'm in the hallway talking with some other graduate students, and my first advisor, who I quit working with him very quickly, he came out and he said, "What are you all doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm talking about a paper I'm going to write for my class." And he says, "That's cheating." And I said, "What?" He says, "You're supposed to do this all on your own." And I said, "Well, if that's the case, I'm going to drop out because I'm not interested in that." And then luckily I talked to him. When he left, the other graduate students said, "Oh, no, we'll work together." And I did. From the very beginning, I found a group of 5 or 6 students and another faculty member, Bernie Weiner, who was much more interested in having a collaborative relationship. So Bernie used to, he also did boxes and arrows. So I'm known for doing boxes and arrows because that's the way my mind thinks. So that's why we have this model. I want to put everything down in an organized fashion, and then I want to move forward from there. So he used to do that. And at the beginning of every year, no term, I guess we were on semesters, so each semester, he would put the model up on the board, and he would then tell each of us where he thought our work was in this model. And it was so wonderful because he would say, "Now, Jackie, you're working over here on this corner. Tell me about how that's going." And then he would turn to someone else and say, "Irene, I see you working here. Is that correct?" I'd say, "Yeah." He said, "Well, how is that work going right now?" And then he would say, "Well, Irene, maybe you should talk to Jackie because, you're looking at something similar." So he very much set it up as not, I'm not going to talk to you all at once because if you share your ideas, they'll get stolen. It was much more, we talk together regularly over the term, and I'm very much interested in how together as a team we are moving the work forward. Now, I've been extraordinarily lucky in the students that I've gotten to work with. I mean, the people who like that model are drawn to me. The people that don't like it, leave. And I think that's fine. I'm not pushing them. I say, this is the way we do it. If you like it, you're welcome to come. If you want to do it a different way, that's fine. But I'm not going to mentor you a different way. This is the way I do it. They would say, "Well, I want to know what job I have to do." And I would say, no. First, you have to learn what we all do. Then you have to tell me what you're interested in. And then we have to talk about how what you're doing fits into what everyone else is doing. And you have to take the initiative. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm going to tell you what is the array of options and help you pick. But beyond that, I'm learning with you. I don't want you to do the same thing I did. That's silly. I want you to do something. Hopefully I'll give them good advice. Well, that's a better question than that. But, then I push them. So Janice Jacobs, who was one of my very best students, she died at a young age from cancer. But when she was ready to do her dissertation, she came into my office with a stack of 3x5 cards. Do you know what those are? So the little index cards that you can write on, and they're stiff.
I see.
So she came in with a stack of them, and she says, "All right, I want to do my dissertation. Here are the things I could do it on." And she puts them out, just like cards playing on a deck. And she says, "What do you think I should do?" And I said, "Well, I think you should not do those. I think these 3 are really interesting." And then she would go away and say, "Oh, I agree with you." And so she would go away and think about it, and then she would come back and say, "Well, I think I'm going to pick number 2, and this is the reason, and this is how I'm going to go about it." And we had this same kind of dialogue, and I would say, "Well, did you think about whether the people understand what you're going to do?" I mean, we had the same kind of that. You told me what you were interested in.
Yes.
You told me how you thought you would measure it because you were going to use existing measures. I said, forget the existing measures. Figure out what it is you want to measure, and then we will make a scale. And I will help you, give you feedback on the scale that will work the best.
Wow.
And so Alan Wakefield is probably the longest person that I've collaborated with. He's the co-author of the book. He came to me as a postdoctoral student. The second...
In which university that time?
He was at the University of Illinois.
Okay.
So at that time they had a very strong motivation group. So he knew he wanted to go on and do a postdoc, and Michigan had one, and he applied, and I got to pick him, and I said, I'll pick him, and he came and worked with me, and we've worked for 45 years. I mean, that was a long time ago.
That's amazing.
Yeah, we're very close. We're going together to a conference in July in Salzburg, Austria, to present our book.
Well, yeah, I want to come back to your recent book. So even when I was reading your book, you said, okay, this is not a systematic review, it's conceptual book. Why is it conceptual book, not systematic review? So,
well, at the simplest level, I don't want to do systematic reviews.
Yeah.
So it's not fun.
What did you want to communicate in your book?
We wanted to communicate our thoughts because so many people, when they come and talk to us at conferences, or I read a person's article and they say, Eccles said, and then they say what I said, and I go, I never said that. That's not even what I think. So there was a lot of misconceptions.
Yes.
So we wanted to get in one place. So the 2020 chapter was sort of one attempt. We wanted to change the name to get people to stop saying we weren't situated. They couldn't any longer say that the situated theory is not situated because we wrote in the book how it's situated. So we wanted to use the book as a way, given that we're old and we probably won't write that much more, this is right now what we think is true. This is what we think might be true, so that these are questions that the next generation needs to answer. These are techniques that have to be developed. So, for example, I'm very interested in how various aspects of subjective task value come together and help a person pick. Some people I know will just, if it's part of their identity, that's all they need. And they only use that one choice. So I don't know whether you've seen, so if you're in a life management class, they will say, take a piece of paper, write down all the pros, and write down all the cons. Have you seen those?
Yeah.
So, and then you're supposed to look at it and decide which to do. Well, I would like to know how you get from writing all of them down to, well, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
How does a person aggregate that information in their head? What algorithms are they using? So this is just basic mathematical psychology, but in much more complex, because I don't think it's a single regression equation. I think they're using a variety of ways of putting the information together to come up with, well, this scores 5 on my scale, this scores 10, I'm going to do this one. So we don't have the techniques to do that now. We're getting them, but you need a lot of data. So when you think about what the AI is doing, it has all of the data that's in the world that it gets access to. Huge amounts of data. So it can do data management, where all they're doing is looking for patterns. They don't have a theory. They don't want to test the data against something. They want to see the most common patterns that emerge. They were actually quite successful. So they, for example, know when you go into a store what things you're most likely to buy based on all the decisions that you've made before. But that's because they have all that information. I don't have that information on anybody. But if you knew. So I drive a Tesla. The Tesla sends to a central bank everything I do in that car. And you've been in my car.
I saw it.
So and so it has a complete record of my driving. So when I say I want to go home, it knows exactly where home is, and it can drive it. When I say I want to listen to music, it knows which music to turn on because it knows the stations I've listened to, so it'll find them for me. Alexa, and that's what they know. That's the systems they know. They're going off of all this information. Well, we as scientists don't have that much information. But there are techniques, statistical techniques, to start to now to look for how a person aggregates information. I would love to get to the point where we could use that in laboratories to actually look both at individual differences and within individual patterns over time. I think that's coming.
Yeah.
So your generation couldn't do that. That's a problem that needs to be solved. I wish I was going to be around to help solve it, but what I can say is somebody needs to work on it, and the tools are coming. So that's why we wrote the book the way we did. We didn't want to look back and say this is what all the studies have shown, because the studies are not situated, and now they're getting to be situated. So now you'll read a method section, and you'll get a lot more information because we had such bad replication problems. So now people are understanding a laboratory study has certain constraints. A study that gathers data where the person doesn't even know it's being gathered may in fact produce much better predictions because you get more natural behavior. So recording what I do in my Tesla, when somebody goes by and I go, God damn it, it knows, and it knows what's going on. Or so I was driving in a car with a friend of mine up in Joshua Tree, and we were talking on the road, and all of a sudden Alexa is who does my phone, came up and said, "Oh, I really like this conversation." And I go, "What?" So not only is the car paying attention to my driving, it's also paying attention to everything I say.
I see. So we have many motivation theories, even when...
Excuse me, can you give me the water?
When I was talking to you, I was very surprised when you said, "Oh, I have been with Bandura in the same committee." So the one who developed the social cognitive theory.
Yeah.
We have many motivation theories. In your book, you mentioned highlight of the needs and so on. So what is the difference between situated expectancy-value theory with other motivation theories?
We do talk about that in the book some, but we don't want to pit it against each other. So Alan and I and Fanny and Sandy, we are what you call integrators. So we're trying to look for how things complement each other, how is similar. So yesterday we talked about Bandura's idea of self-efficacy.
Yes.
How is that different from
Expectancies.
It's not different. It's the same idea. We many theories are using different language to talk about similar things. What was different is when he first talked about it, he talked about it as being very situated. So it was the expectancy that I was going to succeed on the next test. And he wasn't thinking about it in terms of a self-concept of ability emerging from experience over time. Whereas I'm a developmentalist, and that's what I was interested in. So you have an expectancy for a task, and then you do well. Now that changes your view of your expectancy for the next task. Or you do poorly. That changes your expectancy. So we believe that there is both a momentary expectancy, which is like self-efficacy. I mean, I don't think my theory is any different than social cognitive theory. They're basically the same. People came from different traditions. So I came out of motivation theory. Bandura came out of stimulus response theory. So, and he was beginning to move into the brain is important. So it wasn't just reinforcement. People have ideas affect what they do. That was no longer an issue. When I started studying, we accepted that was true. So it was a different historical moment. And I was coming out of a personality needs background, which is very different than Bandura's. But we came to the same idea that people form expectations about how hard something is, about how well they're likely to do, about what they have to do in order to do well. So those are all expectancy beliefs. Thinking of expectancies broadly, so you can have expectancies over what will work. He talks about outcome expectancies. And there he's talking about, what do you think's going to happen if you succeed? So that would have, well, my mom will be happy. I will get money. So some of the things that we have in under value, he has as an outcome expectancy. Then he's got a personal expectancy, which is the expectancy I'll succeed on the next task. And those work together, because the fact that you'll succeed doesn't necessarily mean you want to do it. The outcome expectancy may be the more critical driver, because once you say I can do it, that doesn't mean you're going to do it. That just means you could do it if you wanted to.
Yes.
But you can do lots of things. So you have to pick other there has to be other reasons that feed into this. So that's so we differed from Bandura in that we wanted to think about expectancy, personal expectancies, like he talks about, and that over time they would aggregate in the person's mind to an image of their ability. So they would come to say, well, I'm good at math. And that could become a stable feeling until they failed.
I saw some people using expectancy saying, or confidence.
Yes.
But you say capability, ability. Is it the same confidence?
Well, confidence is the emotional state, so you have ability. Whether or not you think you're going to succeed or not can be affected by your confidence. So when we have the model, we have personal characteristics that also affect these things, because they're subjective. They're not real. They're personal. They're psychological characteristics. So if you are the kind of person that has a lot of confidence, you can say, well, most people fail when they do this, but I can succeed, and I will do it. In fact, Atkinson said, if you have high need achievement, so this is why sometimes cost is a positive influence, not a negative influence. Because he said the harder something is, the more valuable it is. So if you're that kind of person, then knowing that most people will fail, that there's a chance that you will win, is very motivating. And there it's it's a cost, it's a high cost, but the cost is worth it.
For him, he was looking achievement, but when I saw the model, I see engagement, choice, and performance. Can you talk about it so that people can have understanding?
Sure. So we were talking yesterday about it, and we put them initially all in the same box because we were more interested in what predicted to that whole set of outcomes. And it became clear as people began talking more about engagement as a psychological or behavioral variable that we really needed to separate these things. So choice was simply the decision that yes, you're going to do it. Now, how do we get from that to performance? And what is performance? So we began talking about engagement was the mediator between choice and outcome, between performance. So from a decision that you want to do it, you will then get engagement. Now, many things can affect how engaged you can get. So it isn't a 1-to-100% prediction. You have to choose to do it, and then you'll get variation in engagement. And that can be because of many things. It can be from how much support you get. So is there someone else? Do you have cultural capital? Do you have intellectual capital that will let you go from a choice to actually engaging in it? Or when you start doing it, is it just so hard you give up? Or somebody else that you care a lot about says that's a stupid idea. Then you give up because it's costly in terms of your social relationships. So engagement, to me, is how much energy and effort you put into doing the task. Now, that's not the same as performance, because performance is going to be determined again by a lot of things. So you could work really, really, really hard, but still get a low score.
It's long term.
Yeah, because you started with very little information. So you can't give a first grader a sixth grader test, even if the first graders worked really, really, really hard, because they didn't have the intellectual capital when they began to be able to master algebra. So you will get low performance, high engagement, high choice, high engagement, low performance. So then people try to think about, well, how can we measure performance better? Well, you could say what we're going to measure is change over time. So the first grader could get a lot better and still not be very good. But the measure could be, well, how much did they gain? So even though they don't end up at the top of the class, they still learned a lot. And we could say, now, well, that's what we're interested in. So this goes back to what we talked about is, on this in this set of variables, you again need to be very specific. What do you mean by performance? And then you better measure it carefully. So I've had a huge debate in education as to whether or not we use school grades or we use test scores for intellectual capital or for performance in academic areas. They are correlated with each other, but not completely. So which are you going to use? Well, people don't think very hard about that. They just say, well, everybody uses a test score. And I say to them, well, why use a test score? What else besides actual engagement and prior knowledge is going to account for variations in kids' performance on a standardized test? Well, anxiety pops right up. The thing between a test and sitting down and doing it in your classroom is you're being evaluated on a very important task. And we know in that situation people get anxious, some more than others. So if you get highly anxious in that situation, you're not going to perform well. You're going to perform under your actual capacity. Now, what's interesting, so for example, girls and boys. Why don't girls go in math? So people say, well, if you look at the standardized test scores, boys get better scores than girls. If you look at the grades, girls get better grades than boys do. And people will say, that's because the teacher favors the girls. And I say, no, it's because the girls do well when they have control over their time and can work on it. They have more anxiety than boys do, and so when you put them in a test, they are more likely to underperform. And they've tested that. They've said, all right, let's take away the test limits, the time limits on a test. And sure enough, when you take away the time limits on a standardized test, there's no sex difference any longer in how the people perform. So kids coming out of high school taking the standard SAT to get into college, no sex difference, as long as you don't put time constraints. Put time constraints, girls will do more poorly than boys because the girls go slower and they double check. That strategy works really well in classrooms, not so well in a standardized test. So, whereas boys tend to be they're more impulsive, and that pays off in a standardized test, highly competitive situation, better than the be cautious, check your work, make sure you're satisfied with your answer before you go to the next question.
Anyways, when I talk to you, it's like reading a book. I think, okay, did you? It's learning new things because you have more understanding. Sometimes people, when they see you today, who you are, even the theory you developed, Situated Expectancy-Value Theory with your co-authors. So, what made you who you are? So, who mentored you? So, because when I was reading your book, even it's just going back to what you talk a little bit. You had planned to do math and science. Then you changed your mind when you took a class of anthropology and psychology. So why did you change your plan?
I've just found psychology and anthropology much more interesting.
Was it because you visited Africa, Ghana? Then?
Well, I made the decision before I went to Africa, but going to Africa just confirmed it. I mean, when I went to Ghana, so I had taken developmental psychology courses at Berkeley, and at that time Piaget was very, very popular, and Piaget suggested that kids' the development of their mental capacities followed a specific sequence. I got to Ghana, and the kids didn't follow that sequence at all. So that was my first chance of seeing, hey, wait a minute, culture makes a huge difference. And that makes this whole process even more interesting. So, for example, in Ghana, the kids, much of the economy when I was there in 1966 was rural, agricultural. And the women would sell things in the market. So the women were responsible for the agricultural, the within-country agricultural industry. So tomatoes, the things you would buy at the market. The men were in charge of the agricultural activities that were for export. So growing cocoa, timber, things that were being purchased on the open market that go elsewhere. So, those things are more valuable. Men were more likely to do it. The women were more likely to do the farming that took care of the family and also took care of, they sold in markets. And so you go around in a week, a woman and her children would go to one market to the next, selling her goods and buying what she needed. The kids helped. So it was also a bargaining culture. So I had never bargained for anything before, and I got pretty good at bargaining. But, you would say, I want 4 of those, I'll pay you $1. And she would say, oh, no, you must pay me $2. And I would say, no, I'll pay me $1. And then you would come to a price. And the kids, the very young kids, 5-year-olds, would do the same thing. So clearly they understood numbers, they understood money, they understood social interactions that were money in a way that no American child would, because we don't give them practice doing that. And they didn't in Switzerland either. So Piaget never saw a 5-year-old understanding the monetary system and able to engage in commerce. He would have said you can't do that until you're 12 or 13 or 14 years of age. So it really caught my attention as to clearly what we believed was very grounded in Western culture and probably did not reflect anything natural about human development. It was the way it was done in the country. So now you needed to know a lot more about the way it was done.
So, thank you so much. When I was even reading your book, your time when you took decision to measure in psychology, you said there was only one professor of psychology.
Not of psychology, but of motivational psychology.
Oh, motivational psychology. So, how was it? How did you manage that kind of challenge?
Well, first of all, when I went to graduate school, I didn't know what I was doing. I am what we call in the United States a first-generation college student. My father had no college. My mother had no college. And I went to undergraduate, and I didn't know what I just went because I loved school. And so I went. That was what you did. And then when I finished the Peace Corps, I had to figure out what to do. And I thought, well, I like school, so I'll go back and get a PhD in psychology. And when I'm done with that, then I'll figure out what I'm going to do. I didn't know that's where professors came from. So I didn't go to graduate school to become a professor.
That means there was no plan for developing this theory?
Nope, none whatsoever. Just my approach. Just that I like to understand things, and I'm curious. So I got there, and I usually in the U.S., and you may have done this too, you pick where you want to go based on the presence of professors that do that kind of work. I didn't do that at all. I knew I had to go to UCLA or nowhere because that's where my husband wanted to be. So I had no choice. If I was going to go, I was going to go to UCLA. So I applied and I got in, and I didn't know what I was going to study. So I got assigned to the director to a particular person in developmental psychology, and I wasn't interested in what he was doing at all. So if I had stayed with him, I probably would have dropped out. And he was the one in the hallway who said, that's cheating if you talk to other people about your ideas. So in my class, there were some other students, and we began talking. And 2 of them were already working with Bernie Weiner. So they said to me, come to the lab. So I went to his lab, and I visited there, and I liked what was going on, and I decided to want to do more of that. And so I switched from, I stayed in developmental, but I switched my advisor to Bernie Weiner. And it was a real advantage because there were, by that point, 5 graduate students that were there together. And Bernie was very young. I didn't realize how young he was, but he was very young. And he wanted to go to Germany and work with Fritz Heider and other people in Germany motivation as an area of study was much more popular in Germany than in the United States. But he was the only one who was studying motivation at Michigan, at UCLA. So I was able to work with him, and then I kept working with him. And he gave me things to read, and I read them, and I took my courses, and I took a lot of social psychology because he was in social psychology.
UCLA, maybe some people who doesn't know the meaning of that university.
Yeah.
Is University of California?
Yeah. University of California in Los Angeles.
Yes.
And it's one of the best public universities doing that kind of work. There were no women faculty, so at that time, this was in 1966. There was not a single woman faculty in psychology, and there were 70 faculty members in psychology. So a huge number of white males. And so the 4 of us students worked closely together. And we created the first women's studies course, so the first course on gender and psychology. And from that, we wrote a book together that got published. That was a textbook for courses on gender and psychology. And that was very informative for me, because then I knew I could write a book. And I knew I could spell out my ideas, and my ideas people found interesting. And then I went to Smith College, and I told you that I met Sue Goff, and she was very much influential in us writing a chapter in a book on what are values. And then I went to Michigan, and then I started working with Alan. And in each case, I was open to changing. So it was the reason we actually first developed the model was because the U.S. government was very interested in why women weren't going on in STEM courses. And it really was mathematics. So why were, in the United States, females less likely to major in mathematics? And I thought, well, I'm interested in gender, I'm interested in individual differences, I'm interested in achievement, I'm interested in choices. This sounds perfect. I mean, I didn't so much care about gender or math, but this gave me an opportunity. So I'm very good at looking for opportunities that when they describe it, they don't describe it like I see it. I see it as, well, this will give me a way to do what I want to do. So we applied, and we got it. And it was Alan and the other people at Michigan, the graduate students working with me. We worked out the model, and we applied, and then someone else that was famous in the field found the model and said, this is great, and asked me to come and put a chapter in a book she was putting together again, and that's how it came about.
Even if you had planned to major in math and science, the decision you took to major in psychology, you see how at the end you connected math?
Yes, back to, at least I'd taken enough science to be able to talk about it.
You connected with math.
Yeah.
So even your theory has been used by many researchers for like science, STEM, education. So at the end of the day, have been connecting even two things you have been thinking before.
Yeah.
So,
well, I'm hoping you will get it into the field of agriculture.
Yeah, so even when I spoke to you, you said, oh, Emado, it's interesting. You are taking this theory at international, was it international in Africa? So when I came to talk to you, you said, wow. I came up with your theory. Even sometimes that time I was not having understanding, but you gave me the language. So when I was thinking what motivates smallholder farmers in Rwanda, the use of mobile phone, the use of technology, what motivates them? Because Rwanda, we have more than 80%
Mm-hmm.
are smallholder farmers.
Mm-hmm.
In general, they are farmers. Let me say
Mm.
they are farmers. Why? When it comes to paying extension agent is expensive. It's not easy to pay
Right.
extension agent to reach out to them. So then when I refer to mobile phone, I said, okay, this is one way of dissemination of agriculture information.
Mm-hmm.
Then I said, okay, number one, what motivates smallholder farmers
Yeah.
to use mobile phone for agriculture
Yeah.
information? Because the penetration rate of mobile phone was 9. Now currently is 95%. But even if the penetration rate is 95%, is it the same percentage when it comes to use of mobile phone for agriculture information? No.
Yes.
I wanted to know why.
Yeah.
Then I came up with community capitals just to understand the available resources at the ground.
Mm-hmm.
So I know you know those two frameworks. How community capitals fit together with SEVT, Situated Expectancy-Value Theory?
Well, so expectancy value theory is actually quite broad, so that we can't, in a conversation, look at the model. But the expectancy value part that most people study is at the far right side, and it's only about 5 boxes, and there are all these other boxes that feed into what would influence a person's expectancies and values for specific tasks. That's come from a history of socialization and learning. Most people are making they make the choices all the time, but we're more interested in choices that people make, like career choice or using a mobile phone. So more adults making use of this. And things like capital are part of this background. They're part of the background. They're also part of the implementation of the plan. And so the new model that we have has broadened the right side of the model. So we've separated choice from choice from engagement from performance, and we have put in there that things like capitals are what drives a lot of those, how you get from a choice to actual performance. And then we've also talked about how in the past your capitals have formed who you are and what you know, what you bring to the choice. So what is in your system that you bring to the choice, and also even what you've been exposed to. So
in that case, that means community capitals, they are precede motivation.
Yes, well, the system is cyclic. So I don't think of it as every decision today becomes the background for tomorrow. So it cycles on itself. So what you've got is a process of a person learning the world they're in, making decisions, learning things, and then changing their view of the world.
Yeah.
So what's out here becomes what's back here tomorrow.
Yeah.
So we didn't use the term psychological capitals, but I think you could put capitals in each of the boxes back here, because the capitals, so we have a box that's called culture, and that's outside of the person, but that's where cultural capital comes from. So the person lives there, and from that they get certain things that they learn that get internalized. Education really influences the intellectual capitals, that what you've been exposed to learn is your intellectual capital. Your social capital is who you know and who can help you, and that's part of the impact of what we call the socializers. All of those frame what you know when you get to a particular choice point. That's where expectancies and values influence that choice. Then you make the choice, and then all the capitals come back in as being very important in allowing you to implement that choice.
It's a cycle.
Yes.
So I agree. When I took the classes, Neo Noblock, Dr. Neo Noblock, when I took research design for social scientists and the class of theory, that's when, even when we got assignment to reach out to researchers, when I connected with you, I became more motivated. So, because, okay, now my human capital, because I was having understanding, skills, and knowledge, then when I talk to you, oh, I was very motivated. My self-efficacy, I can say, increased.
Yeah.
Then later I start to think about, okay, what should I do next?
Yes.
It comes back to the community capitals. What should I do to help these even smallholder farmers?
That's right. That's right.
So I agree, it's a cycle, uh, which is interesting, but also I always think about, okay, when you have skills and knowledge, can be very helpful
Mm-hmm.
for just inform motivation, self-efficacy. So uh, come back to the
Let me take a second. I want to find the little white dog.
okay. Let's
Well,
see.
Mochi! Mochi, come! Look at you. You're filthy dirty. Mochi! I'm babysitting, so you need to keep talking so that doesn't turn on. Mochi!